Hello, listeners. Welcome to the Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon podcast. And if you've been listening, we've been talking to business leaders around Asia. And today I'm talking to Rosann Ling here today. And she is based in Hong Kong, but for some reason today, she's actually in the same city as me as we are speaking
Yeah.
today. And as I saw on her website, this is a quote that I like to quote here. So, impact community, there's nothing worse than working with an agency that doesn't understand what you do and the impact that you make. So today we have Rosann Ling. She's the founder and creative director of Prism Creative. And Rosann is actually strives to build stronger platforms for impactful brands. Just now I mentioned impact businesses and to communicate important messages, why they matter and what difference they can make. Rosann, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much, Bob, for having me.
Yes, so happened we are in the same city. I didn't expect
Yeah.
that. And
I
it's
should
it's
just
like
try to wave to you from my window.
so I know I from my window for the listeners I can actually see where Rosann is. It's near the center of the city near KLCC, and I know that a fact that it's raining in that area right now. I think.
Yes, it is.
I think. All right. So my first question to all my guests is, what is your favorite kung fu movie?
Yeah. So I had a long, hard think about this because, I'm from Hong Kong. So, the Kung Fu movies are everywhere. I was kind of born from Hong Kong, right? But actually, my favorite Kung Fu movie was not made in Hong Kong. It's actually Kung Fu Panda. If that
Oh,
counts as a movie, I get,
that's
it's an
count. That
animation,
counts.
right?
That counts.
And I think the reason why I love this movie so much is that I find there are some universal truths throughout the storyline, like for any age at any season of your life. And the key message that I get from Kung Fu Panda is encouraging you to like follow your passion in order to find your purpose. Because I think people always talk about finding your purpose, but sometimes that can be such a daunting thing, right? Like, what is your purpose in life? Like, oh, geez, I don't know. And I do think that we're put on this earth to fulfill many different purposes in different seasons of our lives. So much like Po, the Kung Fu Panda, I've always followed my passion and curiosity, which has led me to my purpose, actually.
Wow, I like how how it's weaved into to what you do as well. Thank you for sharing that. A lot of my guests have mentioned Kung Fu Panda. It's one of the most popular Kung Fu movies mentioned
Mm.
on the show. And I just like to quote Master Wu Kuai here. You
That's
know, so my favorite character is Master Wu Kuai says, yesterday is history, tomorrow is a mystery, and today is a gift. So that's why they call it a present. So that is that is so
Absolutely.
Eastern
Yeah, love it.
philosophy in that as well. So good
Yeah.
good choice. I love Kung Fu Panda as well. All right, so let's get into it. So the first question I have as so you have helped impact businesses and you're the founder of Prism Creative. So how do you get into this line?
Mm. Well, it wasn't exactly, a straight path for me, I would say. Um, I actually started this impact journey when I first moved back to Hong Kong, but it wasn't when I started Prism Creative. It was actually in a previous company that I founded called She Collective, and it's an activewear brand. And why I started it was because when I was living in London, I saw there were a lot of boutique activewear brands around, and it was really exciting. And girls are wearing like such amazing like sportswear, and I was like, how can I bring this to Hong Kong? Because I saw a gap in the market when Lululemon was just starting to gain traction, but like that was kind of the only option. So we worked with female founders from around the world. We brought their brands into Asia, and more than that, we really wanted to create more than just an activewear brand. We really wanted She Collective to be a platform for women to share their fitness journeys with one another. And I loved what I was doing. I started to learn a lot about how to build a brand from scratch, how to work with other brands, how to build a community. But then I also saw the immense amount of waste that the fashion industry creates. Like I still remember standing in the warehouse and looking at all these plastic bags because unfortunately, I mean, I don't know if the regulations have changed now, but this was back in 2016, when a lot of the international import-export regulations required you to wrap every single piece of item in plastic. And there's nothing you can do about it because it's a regulation. And it really, really bothered me that there was no alternative solution, because I really tried. I asked our vendors, like, what can we do about this? Like, we don't need the plastic bags. Can you send it without them? They said, no, we cannot export without the plastic bags. So yeah, that was very frustrating for me. And I think that was what kind of planted the seed. And then after a while, unfortunately, I couldn't see eye to eye with certain things with my co-founder. So I made the decision to leave She Collective, and took a break to figure out my next step. And that was when I discovered an amazing podcast by my friend Regina Larco of #Impact Podcast. And she really features a lot of amazing impact founders and what they do, and really highlights the amazing work being done in Hong Kong to help society and to help the environment. And I thought, wow, there are actually so many people out there doing amazing things. How do we not know more about this? And how can I help them deliver this message to the world? So that's kind of how Prism Creative started.
Wow, I actually listened to an interview with Regina as well. And
Ah,
yeah, it's I think a year ago. So I
mm-hmm.
know who she is. And yeah,
Mm,
thank you for sharing that. So that's a great story, from the She Collective right now to helping brands, impact brands communicate. So when you help these brands, you mentioned you found them through the podcast. And what are their common challenges when you start working with them?
yeah. So I would say the number one challenge is, of course, people in the impact space are so passionate about what they do, because you have to be right. It's not an easy task to be trying to change things in society, and also to improve what we're doing, the impact that we're making on this planet. um, and the number one challenge I see is actually not making the messaging simple enough, because often there are also many, many aspects to what they're doing. So really trying to encourage them to filter out all the most important parts and get to the core of the message, so that it's simple enough that a 3-year-old can understand it. Because every day we're bombarded by so much content, right? Like, so how do we stand out, and how do we make ourselves memorable? Because we only have a few seconds to catch attention, and it takes around 7 times for us to see something in order to recall it at a later stage. So we really have to try and make it as easy as possible for people to get what we do right away, so it's easy enough for them to recall as well. So that's the number one challenge. And I think the second challenge as well is trying to understand where people are at on their journey. So this is not just in the impact space, but I see it in many other industries as well. And I always encourage our clients to look at the entire journey that a customer or audience would take, because someone, for example, let's say like on a fitness journey, right? Like someone could be on step 1, or even like step 0, where they're wondering, oh, like should I get a PT? Like, what do I know I need to improve my health, but I don't know how to get there. That's like step 0 to 1, right? Some people are all the way up to like 8 or 9 already, where they're training for marathons. And you can't use the same messaging for all these different people on all these different stages of their journey. So really having that empathy to understand where they're at will really help to get the message across at the right time, at the right stage.
Yep. So these businesses or have different stages of their business, right? So it's also one thing I observe about impact brands is profitability an issue? Like, do you also have to advise them on business models as such?
Oh, definitely. I mean, I always try to encourage clients to actually first think about the business model, because you have to sustain yourself in order to be able to serve the community, right? If you cannot even sustain yourself, how can you sustain the business itself? Cannot.
Yeah, I think that it's something very important, and a lot of these impact founders, in my country, actually, it's I find that they're very passionate,
Mm,
and I think a good way to say what you just said is you have to be sustainable yourself to help with
yes.
sustainability. so,
Yes.
so yes, yeah,
Exactly.
yes.
Yeah.
So can you share like maybe a story of how you help one of these clients of yours?
Mm. So I've got a client called Beams Collective, and they're an Australian coffee brand, and they started off with launching like with coffee capsules, and what makes them special is that they're completely recyclable, so they're made from like aluminium pods, like those Nespresso coffee pods, right? But then they use like a very special type of rice paper to cover the coffee. So the capsule itself is actually 100% recyclable. And also the contents itself is compostable at home. And what makes them special is other than like just having coffee, they actually use adaptogenic ingredients in their coffee capsules. So they use TCM like reishi and lion's mane. Yeah, so they did a lot of research into how to integrate this into their coffee. And they had a very successful first couple of years. They launched in both Hong Kong and Australia at the same time. But they kind of got to a point where they were wondering, like, well, are we just coffee or are we something more? So they wanted to do a lot of things. They wanted to focus on sustainability. They wanted to focus on social impact. But in the end, they felt like the message was being diluted because there was just too much going on. So what we did was we actually just took a step back and we really dived into, first of all, what does coffee represent in our day-to-day lives? And what makes their product unique? And what we landed on was actually what they're trying to do is to simplify your health by amplifying it. And it's really about taking care of your health. It doesn't have to be hard. And they're here to simplify it for you so you can make clear, informed choices every day, starting with your morning cup of coffee. So you notice here we've kind of scaled back on talking about sustainability and scaled back about talking about social impact, because I think sometimes these kind of messaging, it gets lost. And really, we really want to focus on the product itself at this point. So with that clarity, they actually then expanded their product range beyond coffee and into other lifestyle products like tinctures, teas, sparkling tonics, all with the same idea that they're creating products where you can integrate TCM easily into your everyday life. And then through supporting their brand, you're also supporting in sustainability and social impact as well. And now they've just started selling on Tmall, and they're in talks with various other supermarkets in Singapore and Malaysia as well.
Thank you for sharing, Rosann. Yes, I believe it's very important to start with the product rather than the impact. So if I may say that, and
Yes.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's very important because I drink coffee every day,
Mm-hmm.
and I try my best to use a reusable cup and things like that. But it is if you can tap into the market from coffee to tea to drinks, it's something that we have every single day. And yeah, thank you for sharing that story as well. And looking at your LinkedIn profile, you have something called the Positioning Bootcamp,
Mm-hmm.
right? So can you tell us why is it important to work on the positioning?
Yeah. So I mean, positioning is a very it's a small but significant part of an entire brand strategy. So how I see brand strategy is it's like a flight path. So you have a destination in mind, right? And you're trying to map the flight path towards that. But throughout the flight, things can change, due to weather conditions. And that's like how the market changes as well, or even how the business structure itself can change. So your destination and your wider vision of the business is most probably still the same, but how you get there might have evolved. So how I see positioning is it's this small but key coordinate that can influence your entire flight path. And so we consistently need to be aware of our positioning to make sure we're still aligned with the vision, right? So positioning helps to align your organization internally, externally, that your comms and everything, you're delivering the right messaging, and you're actually positioning yourself in the market in a way that helps you to differentiate yourself, and to have that clarity around like who you are and what you stand for. I mean, it's such an integral part of building a brand, because it really helps you to make better decisions as well, I find. And that's why I think it's, it really can influence your entire flight path, because once you have clarity around your positioning, you know what opportunities to say yes and what opportunities to say no to. Because so often I encounter business owners and they're like, yeah, this is originally what I set out to do, but life happens and things happen, and you might have to end up saying no to a lot of things that you should be you might end up saying yes to a lot of things you should be saying no to. And eventually you keep saying yes to all these opportunities, and it brings you further and further away from what your vision is. So yeah, that's how I like help clients achieve clarity in making sure that every decision they make is aligned to their vision. And that really starts from having a clear positioning of where you're at, who you're here to serve, what you stand for, what you value, what your values are.
Thank you, Rosann. I love that analogy of that flight path as well. It's I think positioning would be something like a GPS. Like,
Exactly.
yeah,
Yes.
knowing where you are,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
where you want to go.
Uh-huh.
Is it
Yeah.
aligned with where you want to go as
Mm-hmm.
well? Yeah. So yeah, I think I've seen a lot of businesses, take on. I literally had a friend's business fail because she took on projects that were more aligned with profitability, earning the money rather than what she really wanted to do, and she had to close down the business. So I exactly know
Oh, I'm
what you
sorry to
mean
hear that.
is why it's important as well.
Yeah.
So,
And I know how easy it is as a business owner, because I mean, I'm a business owner myself, right? And every day I also have to make these decisions myself. So I know how hard it is to balance the two as well.
yes,
It's not easy.
it is. It is not easy as well.
Mm.
Yeah, I am also I'm sort of a solopreneur, so it's even worse. At least when you have a team or a co-founder, it's by
Yeah, you
votes.
can like,
Yeah,
check with them.
it's democratic, but once you're making decisions by yourself, it's a bit
Mm.
hard. So thank you for
Yeah.
sharing. Love the stories that you shared, and also the effects of positioning. So the next one is you can please share with us, like, so one of the purpose of this podcast as well, I want to introduce the subject of impact brands out there, and it's most people in the region in this region don't know what it is. So can you share with us some of your favorite impact brands?
Well, actually, there are so many. Yeah, there are actually a lot of great brands out there doing amazing things. So the first one is it's a sustainable footwear brand from New Zealand. I don't know if you might have heard of it. They're called Allbirds, and they use innovative natural materials to make shoes. So, for example, eucalyptus leaves and merino wool. And what really stands out about them is like, yes, they're sustainable, but also it's a fantastic product. So they're very stylish, and they're very comfortable as well. And I think it's so important. We've already mentioned this, like the product itself is so important, because in order to influence behavior change, you're trying to convince people to go out of their way to choose something else. So it has to be something that's even better than what they're already using. Um, And we do a lot of research around this as well, you know, whenever we're working with our clients and trying to identify like, okay, what is their unique positioning? What consumers currently think about their brand. And there was actually something that really stood out once when we were doing this research, when we were asking this particular brands like VIPs if they could just describe in a couple of words how they would what they think is unique about the brand itself, and it's a sustainable loungewear brand. And a lot of the answers came back saying, oh, we think it's really special because it's sustainable yet stylish, or eco-friendly yet comfortable. So this tiny word yet, it tells us a lot about what consumers think about sustainable products now, because they're still not making the link between sustainability and fashionable, or eco-friendly and comfortable. So I think Allbirds is a fantastic example. Another one is an Australian brand that sells eco-friendly sanitary products, and their hero product is actually toilet paper. Yeah. So I think if you can even make the experience of buying and using toilet paper fun and meaningful, like, I think you've nailed it. So they make their packaging very fun, very bold, and it's designed to be displayed in the bathroom. So it helps people feel good about doing good. Yeah. So their product is mainly like sanitary products, and they donate 50% of their profits to clean water and sanitation nonprofits.
Thank you for sharing, Rosann. It's very interesting, and at least you didn't mention the brands from Sweden. So I've heard a lot about the sustainable brands from Sweden, and I was like, okay, luckily it's not from
Yeah.
Sweden.
No, check out this Australian brand. It's called Who Gives a Crap. I mean, even the name itself is like so fun, right?
Yeah, sounds interesting. Yeah, I'll be Australia hopefully later this year, so maybe I'll check it out as
have a
well.
look out. Yeah.
Yeah, right. Thank you for sharing. So talking about all these sustainable brands, is there something? So when I talk to impact brands, when I talk to sustainable leaders, they always say there's something in the industry called greenwashing. So is there something like impact washing?
Oh yeah, definitely, definitely. And it's something that myself and my colleagues constantly have to, you know, keep ourselves in check, because we kind of see ourselves as like the gatekeepers, where, you know, we're here to help give the brand a voice. So we really see ourselves as responsible for what's being put out there. The thing is, I see it from both sides. So as a consumer, of course, I want to ensure that, you know, everything the brand is saying, putting out there is as transparent as possible and as truthful as possible. But I think the challenge that we have in Asia is that there's very little regulation around this. So it's very loose, you know, around what's organic, or, you know, what's vegan, or what's sustainable, and how far do you have to trace down the supply chain to say that it's organic. There's nothing around that in most Asian countries, actually. So it's also confusing for brands themselves, because I work with a lot of brands who want to do good, but then we're also wondering, you know, how far back do we have to trace, and like, what kind of certifications do we actually need to get in order to call them sustainable? We don't actually really know. So in a way, we try our best actually not to promote that side of the business too much, and instead what we do is we turn that around by forgetting about these labels. So, you know, nowadays anyone can say they're sustainable, right? Anyone can say they're trying to make an impact, but are they really doing it? I think what makes us an impact brand successful is actually by saying, and not just by doing, and not just by saying, and really like leading by example. I think that's the best way to avoid impact washing or greenwashing. Yeah, so, you know, for example, we have a client in Bali. They're an eco resort, and we have purposefully not positioned them as sustainable travel. And okay, so Bob, let me ask you, I say sustainable travel, and what comes into your mind?
Traveling with low carbon emission, things like that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's not really clear, right?
Yeah.
What it actually is. So that's the thing. I think no one really knows what sustainability truly means until they experience it themselves. So how we've positioned them, they're called Nadi Bali, if the listeners want to check them out, is they're an eco-lux resort. And the accommodation is simple but luxurious glamping tents. They're surrounded by nature. Their cafe only serves food directly from their own permaculture garden or farms nearby. And they host workshops for their guests or for communities around them. And they also positively impact the villages around them by educating them about waste and about how to create their own permaculture gardens, because food waste and waste in general is actually a huge problem in Bali. So in a way, they're doing all these things, but they're not openly advertising it. They're not making it their priority, because what they're making a priority is by flipping the script and getting people to come and experience it firsthand and create their own definition of what sustainable travel means, because it can mean so many different things to so many different people. And hopefully by providing this immersive experience, then you're influenced by the experience and you can take a piece of that away and start to make your own impact in your own communities as well.
Thank you for sharing, Rosann. Sounds like a very important role you have to play, not only to help the business and the brands, but sort of to be the gatekeeper for impact
Yeah.
washing as well. So it's, I
Well,
think it,
yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, it's quite important because we're the ones writing the copy for them, right? We're the ones helping them determine their positioning. So that's why I think it's so important that impact brands choose agencies that are able to understand them, because so many times I've heard from clients who worked with people who don't actually understand what they do, and then they make the mistake of greenwashing or impact washing, or not being able to communicate their messaging in a way that can resonate with their audience in the right way.
Wow, thank you, Rosann. And yeah, so next question I would have, I think this just came off the bat. You're based in Hong Kong and just mentioned you work with a client in Bali, and I believe you work with clients around the world, I believe. And I remember on your podcast with Regina, you said, oh yeah, you were booked up for the quarter. So how do you get to work with clients all around the world?
We've been quite lucky. So it's really mainly been word of mouth. I think because it's so niche what we do, working specifically with impact brands. And of course, we've been impacted somehow by the pandemic, and there's a lot less budget going around for NGOs or for brands in sustainability. So we've also had to do a little bit of a repositioning ourselves, actually. So I mean, yes, ideally we want to be working mostly with brands in this space, but then also we came to realize that an even bigger impact we can make is if we're working with organizations, companies that don't actually know how to get into this space, and hopefully we're able to shed a little bit light on how to get into this space as well. So really we work with any business that wants to do something good.
Yes, I think from helping impact businesses to helping businesses make an impact. That sounds a bit funny, but anyway, that's
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
that's
I
it.
mean, at the end of the day, we're still making an impact together, right?
Yes, yes. So being the so like thanks for sharing that you are helping with the positioning. So making sure they don't impact washing, impact wash and greenwash. And so as the person who helps with positioning, what are your views on what does the future hold for this space?
Oh, it's challenging. It's always been challenging, but I think it will, because of the impacts of the pandemic and the economy in general. There other people have other priorities at the moment, unfortunately, and I think that is a reality that we need to accept as well. Being in the impact space, you've got housing issues, you've got political issues, you've got the war going on. There's a lot going on. So if I were to go to a supermarket and I looked at the two different options, toilet roll that can benefit nonprofits and donate to sanitary products to them, but I have to pay a little bit extra versus just regular toilet paper that I can pay less for. I think, unfortunately, people will be choosing the latter more often now, just simply because of the fact that they're not currently able to. It's not that people don't care. It's just that there are other priorities at the moment. I mean, Hong Kong itself, we have more than 15,000 NGOs. So it's a challenge to stand out in the first place. But also it's a challenge to get people to actually listen to what they've got to say. So I think what really motivates people to take action is if they can get excited about being part of something, and for us to always think about what's in it for them as well. But I know that it will always be a challenge, and budget will continue to be an issue, I think, for the coming years. But yeah, I always encourage founders to try and think outside the box a little bit now, and think of competition as collaboration, and try to maybe reach out to other organizations to compound the efforts.
Yep. Thank you for it. Is tough times indeed, but
Yeah.
so like thank you for coming on, and I would like to end with this question. So I have a lot of guests on my podcast, and one of the popular topics this year is actually ESG. After AI, it is actually ESG. So I
Yes.
believe there is some that you said that you want to focus on helping businesses make an impact. So I believe there is a bit of hope there. So a lot of my audiences are on LinkedIn. We connected on LinkedIn, and a lot of my guests and listeners come from LinkedIn as well. So maybe we can end with this. Like, what would you say to businesses or corporations looking to make an impact? How can they start?
I think it doesn't have to be this massive change, because we're all on different stages of this impact journey, and you can start really small and keep it simple. For example, if you start this thing in the office to say, okay, we're from now on Mondays and Tuesdays and Wednesdays, we're all gonna bring our own lunch boxes to the cafe and say no to disposable cutlery and say no to disposable boxes. And that itself, over time will compound already. So it doesn't have to be this big fancy thing to tackle sustainability. And I think it's always important to think about, what's the next best step I can take without overwhelming yourself too much. So just start making these small incremental changes, and I think you might be surprised how many people would be able to join you in that way, like if it's simple enough for them to implement.
Thank you, Rosann. Yes, I believe it is very important indeed, because with the number of staff with all these companies, you educate them and you get them started with making an impact, and with the number of people working, it will make a minimum impact at least. So thank you so much, Rosann. Thank you for being on the pod. So for the listeners, please connect with Rosann Ling on LinkedIn. That's where we first connected, and please follow her and Prism Creative as well. Thank you, Rosann, for being on the show.
Thanks so much for having me, Bob.
Thank you.